Okay, let's jump right in. Think about the stuff you're most intimately familiar with, not facts or figures, but the feeling of things.
Mm-hmm.
That sharp kick of your first coffee in the morning, the smooth, cool glide of silk between your fingers,
Yeah.
the unmistakable ache when you stub your toe,
Mm-hmm.
or just seeing the incredibly vivid green of a leaf against a brilliant blue sky.
Right. These aren't just physical events, are they? They're experiences
We live them subjectively.
from the inside.
And that subjective internal quality of experience is, well, arguably the deepest mystery in science and philosophy. We have incredibly detailed scientific accounts of what happens in the brain when you see that green leaf.
Neurons firing, signals traveling.
Complex networks, processing light wavelengths, identifying shapes, guiding actions. We're getting really good at mapping the mechanics of perception.
Right. You can build a whole physical story about light hitting your retina, signals zipping back to your visual cortex, and your brain discriminating green from red. A whole chain of physical causes and effects. Absolutely. But the baffling part, often called the hard problem of consciousness, is this. How does all that purely physical processing in, gray matter, how does it give rise to this?
Yeah.
This rich, subjective inner world, what it's like to actually see the green, not just process the information about greenness.
That feels like the crucial gap. How do electrical signals become the experience of green?
Exactly.
And this is exactly what we're diving into today, looking at a perspective that offers a, well, potentially radical answer based on some fascinating source material, specifically insights from philosopher Keith Frankish.
Yes, his view, explored in the interview we've been unpacking, suggests the key isn't solving the mystery of these inner feelings directly, but understanding something he terms the illusion of qualia.
Okay, illusion of qualia. So prepare yourself, because as this deep dive might just challenge some fundamental ideas you hold about your own mind, what's happening inside your head right now.
So let's make sure we're on the same page about what we mean by this hard problem and those subjective feelings. As you said, the science gives us a robust physical account of processing external stimuli.
It's the objective side of things. Light energy in, behavior out, input, output.
Exactly. But then there's the subjective side. What does the source material call that? That inner feeling?
That's where the term qualia comes in. Singular,
Mm.
quali. It's the philosophical forehand, sort of, for those subjective, qualitative aspects of experience.
Right.
The source uses examples like the specific way the sound of this deep dive feels to you, the feel of silk, the particular color of that green leaf, the what its likeness.
And the feeling that these inner experiences are private, right? Like
Yeah.
you mentioned. Maybe what looks green to me feels completely different to you, but we call it the same thing. They seem mysterious, perhaps even kind of ineffable, hard to put into words.
They feel like these deeply internal, maybe non-physical properties. The source also uses terms like phenomenal properties or the what it is likeness to try and get at this seemingly unique, private quality of experience.
And for some thinkers, this mystery is so profound, they believe our minds might simply be the wrong kind of instrument to ever truly grasp how consciousness arises from the physical brain.
Uh-huh.
The philosopher Colin McGinn is one example mentioned in the source, suggesting a solution might exist, but it's beyond our cognitive reach. It's a kind of philosophical pessimism about understanding ourselves.
A bit depressing, maybe.
Well, yes. But the perspective we're exploring from Keith Frankish is more optimistic. He believes a solution is possible for us.
Oh, okay.
He does. And the source outlines the two main paths optimists typically consider. One is finding a solution entirely within the existing frameworks of science, leveraging concepts from cognitive science, like how the brain represents information or monitors its own activity.
So using the tools we already have, basically.
Pretty much. No need for anything fundamentally new or non-physical.
And the other path.
That you do need something fundamentally new, maybe postulating entirely new properties of matter that are somehow correlated with brain activity, something outside our current scientific understanding, like a scientific revolution.
A revolution in physics or metaphysics, maybe.
Right. A revolution in our understanding of reality or mind. Now, Frankish, according to the source, leans heavily into the first path. He thinks we should thoroughly explore explanations rooted in existing science and physicalism before introducing mysterious new non-physical stuff.
Okay, so he's committed to a physical world, explained by science. But he also acknowledges that qualia, as they're usually described, these private, mysterious, apparently non-physical properties, they feel too strange to fit neatly into that physical picture.
Right? They seem odd.
How does he bridge that gap This is where it gets really interesting, I think.
This is the radical move highlighted in the source.
Mm.
If qualia feel too mysterious to be physical, but the world is physical, then the conclusion Frankish arrives at is startling. Qualia, as that concept is typically understood as these mysterious non-physical properties involved in experience, simply don't exist.
They are an illusion.
Precisely, an illusion.
Which, honestly, is a tough pill to swallow, right? As the source points out, your immediate reaction might be, wait a minute, my experience right now feels undeniably real. You're telling me seeing this blue sky, feeling this silk, that's all an illusion.
And that's a crucial distinction to clarify, which the source does well. He's not denying that you are having the experience. The blue sky is real, the silk is real, you are seeing the blue sky and feeling the silk. The experience itself is real.
Okay, so the experience is real. Phew. What's the illusion then? What part is illusory?
The illusion is about the nature of that internal experience. It's the idea that having that experience involves possessing these mysterious, apparently non-physical qualia properties over and above the physical processing.
Ah, okay.
It seems magical, separate, and non-physical when you introspect, but that is the illusion.
So the feeling of the mystery, the feeling that it's something beyond physics, that's the illusion.
Yes, that's the core idea, the feeling of it being this special, private, non-physical qualia property is the illusion generated by the way we are built and how we introspect.
Okay, that makes a kind of counterintuitive sense. But how would this illusion arise? How does the brain create the feeling that there are these mysterious qualia when, according to this view, there aren't?
Well, according to this perspective, it happens when we shift our focus. In everyday life, you're just looking at the green leaf or feeling the silk. You're focused outwards on the world.
Right, interacting with things.
Exactly. But when you turn your attention inwards and start to reflect on the experience itself, how it seems to you, and when you introduce philosophical terms like qualia to describe it, well, you're entering a different, more theoretical realm of thinking.
It's almost like the very act of introspecting and trying to capture what it's like leads us down a path where we kind of invent this concept of qualia, which then seems mysterious, because the concept itself assumes something non-physical needs explaining.
Exactly. The source suggests that the concept of qualia can sort of beg the question. It presupposes the existence of these hard-to-explain non-physical qualities instead of just asking what's physically involved in having the experience.
So the concept itself is loaded.
Kind of. The concept of qualia arises from introspection, but introspection, according to this view, might be misleading us about the fundamental nature of what's actually happening.
So if we peel away this qualia illusion, what's the actual physical story? What's the alternative explanation for our rich inner life? The source offers a kind of two-part explanation for this.
Right. Part one is what you might call the perceptual story. This is the standard scientific account we talked about. The brain is a complex information processor.
Takes in data, processes it.
It takes sensory input, builds representations of the external world, shapes, colors, sounds, textures, and uses that processing to guide our actions and interactions with the environment.
And you pointed out earlier that a sophisticated robot could conceivably do a lot of that input processing output work without necessarily having consciousness, right? Without the feeling.
Precisely. That purely objective processing doesn't seem to capture the subjective feeling. So that leads to part two, the rich inner life story. What creates that subjective feeling?
Yeah, what's that bit?
The source suggests this might involve the brain monitoring its own activity, a form of internal monitoring or introspection of the perceptual processing that's happening.
Ah, okay. So when I'm seeing the green leaf and it feels a certain way, it's not because there's some separate green quail property floating around in my head. It's because my brain is processing the green input and is also like monitoring that processing activity.
Right.
And that internal monitoring is what I experience as the feeling.
That's the core idea presented. When you describe how the experience feels, you might actually be reacting to the brain's internal reports or monitoring of its own neural activity related to processing the green. Rather than experiencing some distinct non-physical feel, the experience is best understood as complex brain activity and processes, not in terms of a special non-physical feel property.
And the idea of that non-physical feel
is the theoretical construct, the illusion that arises from our particular way of introspecting.
Okay, that's a really different way to think about introspection itself. It's not a perfect window onto some inner reality, maybe not even onto qualia.
Right.
But maybe it's more like a monitoring process of our own physical brain states. But then why? Why would evolution build us this way? Why create this system where introspection seems to generate this illusion of mysterious non-physical qualia?
Well, the source brings in an interesting evolutionary idea here, attributed to Nicholas Humphrey. The hypothesis is that maybe the function of consciousness, or specifically this seeming of having a magical, private, non-physical inner life,
Yeah.
is to make us seem special to ourselves.
To give us this deep internal sense of self-importance or uniqueness, like, wow, there's something really going on in here.
Exactly. And the consequence of that internal feeling of specialness is that it gives us a profound interest in ourselves, in our own existence, our own well-being. We care about this inner life.
And that caring extends outwards.
And by extension, that interest extends to the existence and inner lives of others. It makes us social beings who value minds.
Wow. So the source is suggesting that the very hardness of the problem, the fact that Qualia feels so mysterious and hard to pin down physically, isn't a bug in our ability to understand, but maybe a feature designed by evolution.
That's the fascinating twist. The mystery, the seeming non-physicality, might be evolution's way of making consciousness feel incredibly important and valuable, ensuring we care about our own minds and the minds of others. The hardness is what makes it feel special, perhaps.
Huh. That turns the whole problem on its head a bit.
It does.
So if this perspective is correct, or even on the right track, and consciousness is fundamentally about the kind of processing and internal monitoring happening rather than the specific biological stuff it's made of, like neurons.
Yeah, the wetware.
What does that mean for something like artificial consciousness?
Yeah.
Could a machine have this?
Well, the source suggests this view definitely opens the door to that possibility. If it's the functional organization and activity, the way information is processed and monitored internally that gives rise to conscious experience and, the illusion of qualia, then there's no fundamental philosophical reason why similar processes couldn't, in principle, occur in a non-biological system, like a sufficiently advanced computer.
So artificial consciousness isn't ruled out under this perspective. It's a possibility, depending on whether we can replicate those specific functional processes, that kind of self-monitoring maybe.
Precisely. It shifts the question from can machines be made of the right stuff
Right.
to can machines perform the right kind of activity and internal monitoring. It's a functional question, not a material one.
Right. Okay, pulling this all together then, this deep dive into the source material presents a bold idea. Our conscious experience is absolutely real. We're definitely having experiences.
Undeniable.
But the common understanding, or maybe the philosophical concept, that it involves mysterious non-physical qualia is, under this view, an illusion.
An illusion generated by the brain's own processes, particularly how we introspectively monitor our perceptual systems, possibly for evolutionary reasons linked to making us value ourselves and others.
It's a way to try and explain the rich, subjective inner world within a purely physical framework without needing extra mysterious ingredients.
Exactly. It tries to naturalize consciousness completely.
So here's something to think about. If our subjective feeling of what it's like is best understood as our brain monitoring its own complex processes, does that change how you think about your own internal reality? And does it change the way you think about the potential for consciousness in non-biological systems like AI? It really makes you reconsider what's actually happening when you look inward, doesn't it? What introspection is.